Hi, I'm Bob Rose. Welcome to this Heart of the Piano tutorial on There Was a Most Beautiful Lady by Herbert Howells. This is one of the alternative ABRSM pieces for grade 6. Not a massively popular piece at the moment, I think. I hope I changed that with this tutorial and with my performance. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous piece. I think there's maybe 3 reasons why this piece might not be so popular. I think it's very ambitious for grade 6. I think you can't really play this piece unless you're really good at counting, like being able to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And these rhythms are quite tricky. So I think rhythm is usually the weakest point of all of my students, and this piece, you've got to really know what you're doing in terms of counting and in terms of rhythm. So that's one reason, but really don't let that stop you, because this piece is beautiful and so and actually good for you to get to learn, you know, what to do with these rhythms. I think the second reason why it might not be super popular is that I think it's hard to find this piece on the internet. It's not free, you've got to go buy the book. And I recommend this particular book that I'm using for this. It's ABRSM Core Classics, grades 5 to 6. It's full of really, really good pieces in here. It's a really good book, worth having. I'm actually going to put a review of these set of books up on my podcast, which is Heart of the Piano. I'll put a link in the description below. Check out the review when it comes up in the next couple of weeks. I think reason number 3 why this isn't super popular, the ABRSM recorded version is truly awful. It's so... when I listen to it, I feel like the pianist is like, I hate my life. Why? Oh, I hate this piece. Why am I playing? It just sounds like someone who hates their job. I don't feel any joy, any love for this piece. And I think it's overly pedantic in terms of the rhythm. It's like they're just trying to play all the rhythms correct. And I think that this piece just doesn't work if you play all the rhythms exactly as they're written. The rhythms need to be very, very flexible. So for example, like just from the first bar, you know, we could count, it's sort of 1 and 2 and 3, and for the very first bit, it's like 1 and 2 and, or you could think of it as 1 and 1 and 2 and, but yeah, again, it's quite tricky to count this, but the correct rhythm is something like this. But who wants to listen to it like that? Really, it's as long as you're counting 1, 2, 3, 1. So these semiquavers, and basically I'm going to try in this video to refer only to semiquavers, demisemiquavers, to people who don't speak demisemiquaver language, like in America. Semiquavers are 16th notes, so semiquavers 16th notes, two beams. Demisemiquavers 3 beams. Demisemiquavers are the 32nd notes, I think. So basically, semiquavers first bar, demisemiquavers 4th bar, and then I'm just going to stick to that just so that my brain doesn't melt referring to them over and over again. And in the description, actually, I'll just put a little sort of thing so you can keep looking there if it's confusing you, if you don't speak that language. Anyhow, so the semiquavers in bar 1, I kind of just want to push them up to like the end of beat 1. So rather than halfway through beat 1 like that, I just prefer with a little bit of like a crescendo, something like that, because basically this is a complete rip-off of the Lark Ascending by Vaughan Williams. which certainly in England at least is sort of that we have a radio station, Classic FM, which is sort of like very populist, and lots of people who don't know anything about classical music listen to this radio station. To cut a long story short, they have the charts of classical music, and The Lark Ascending is always like in the top 3 or something. It's like one of the most insanely popular pieces in England. I don't know about the rest of the world. It's a violin. It's a solo violin playing with an orchestra, almost like a concerto, if you like. And this is such a rip-off, especially when we get to like bar 11. So anyone who knows The Lark Ascending will instantly go, oh my God, that is a total rip-off. Herbert Howells idolised Vaughan Williams, and I think actually when he heard Vaughan Williams, it inspired him to compose. So Vaughan Williams was a hero of his. Vaughan Williams, I think, wrote The Lark Ascending, I think in 1914, published in 1920. So yeah, it's highly, highly likely that Herbert Howells like completely ripped it off. The Lark Ascending is about a lark. It's about birds. So the birds aren't like ba da 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 da. The birds are free. They do sort of sudden, quick flying. You know, it's like and then when we get to bar 4, it's a bird doesn't go like it does on the ABRSM recording. This is not a bird. Birds, they're not like, like, you know, they're robot birds maybe, which I gather that a lot of people in America believe that birds are government robots. But anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, we're not talking robots here. We're talking organic birds that are very graceful. So bar 4 would be something like, as long as you're counting the beats, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so on like that. So I always say this to all my students: make sure that at least once you can count out loud as you play. Once you know you can count out loud as you play, then you can stop doing it because you can internalize it. And when I perform something like this, in my mind, somewhere deep at the back of my mind, is very quiet counting. It's not just tumbleweed. It's not just like most of my students, which is like, oh, it just goes like this. You need to know where the beats are. But when you know where the beats are, that gives you freedom. So I think a lot of the time people don't want to count because they feel that they're being constricted and there isn't the freedom to be expressive. But it's the opposite. When you count, it gives you freedom. And I don't mean count like a metronome. I mean like you can speed up and slow down with good taste. But anyhow, so just bear in mind that for this piece to work, it needs a lot of elasticity. So especially the demisemiquavers usually need to be sort of pushed to a very particular part of the beat. So beat 4, I push the demisemiquavers just behind beat 3. So we've got 1, 2, and it's all shaped as well. It's not da 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 da, which is how the ABRSM person plays it. Ugh. It's like, and then I shape it. Like a bird flying, you know, it goes up and down. It doesn't just you know. So let's look at these bar 5, and then I push these demisemiquavers up to the next bar, and the whole thing breathes. This flourishes in this moment. And then beat bar 8. Push this up, By the way, I do recommend having this book open always when you watch my tutorial videos, so you can see exactly which bars that I'm referring to. Now it's interesting because I was just looking at this bar here. When I was looking at this piece, usually when I practice and when I'm playing and practicing, I actually watch television, and I know a lot of people would be totally horrified by that. I'm not going to explain it now. Maybe in a future video I'll explain how that works for me. And I think that what's interesting, Liszt, one of the greatest pianists and teachers who ever lived, Liszt said to his students that he recommended reading literature, reading novels while they practiced. So I don't think that I'm just like completely weird, although I think that you have to be very careful with this, because when I watch television as I practice, I know exactly where my awareness is. I know exactly where my focus is. I never let myself just get compulsively pulled into the television. It's more like I'm very, very conscious and deliberate about how much of my awareness I give to the television and where my awareness is in what I'm doing and how I'm splitting it. And if anything, it makes me more aware and more able to control what I do with my focus and attention. But anyway, so the whole point of me saying that, when I was looking at this piece and in preparation to put it up on YouTube, and there is a YouTube performance which you can see in the description below, there'll be a link for it. I was watching a costume drama set around the court of King Henry VIII. And this was just perfect music for this, because it's sort of, it's supposed to, you know, be very evocative of Renaissance sort of England and that kind of thing. And I'm going to have talk about the harmony in a minute. So, and when we come to here, yeah, it's supposed to be very evocative of ye olde England. Now, I did do a tutorial and a performance some time ago on a different grade 6 piece from Trinity, which I recommended in my easiest pieces to pass grade 6 with. And if you do grade 6 ABRSM performance, you can choose a fourth piece. And I recommended doing In Dreams from Lord of the Rings, which is in the extra thing for Trinity, that when you spend a little bit more money and you get the pieces from previous years, this is one of them. And I think that this is so similar. So and then things like, so lovely piece, very, very emotive. And I feel like There Was a Most Beautiful Lady is that, but at like 1,000 times more sophisticated. It's the same kind of vibe, the same very, very similar sort of superficial harmonic language, superficial emotion, superficial sort of the idealistic view of times gone by. Coming back to this. Isn't it interesting just how similar those two pieces are? Now, it's funny because the whole reason why I did the easy way to pass grade 6 was to sort of help students out in There was one student in particular I was thinking of who just wanted to get grade 6 pieces the easiest way possible so that she could get points for university entrance, which is like what you when you pass exams in the UK, you can use those points to sort of get you extra marks when you're going for university. And then it turns out that my teenage student really doesn't like this in Dreams very much. And when I was sort of asking her about what's going on, it's so beautiful, there's so much emotion, I can't remember the exact words that she said, but it was like, yeah, but it's very forced, it's very false. And I thought, how interesting. I think she's got very, very sophisticated taste for a teenager, because, you know, to me it's like, I think of this in Dreams. And you know, forgive me for the digression, I do think it's kind of relevant and interesting. I think it's very easy to love, especially for teenagers. But I think she has way more musical sophistication than I gave her credit for, because if I'm honest, yeah, it's cheesy. This is definitely at the cheesy end of things, this In Dreams. Whereas There Was a Most Beautiful Lady is like the same vibe, but so sophisticated. There's these beautiful, unusual harmonies. It's just full of richness, full of interesting stuff to get your teeth into. I think one thing she might have said is it's very obvious, and this is not obvious. This is just full of nuance and subtlety. Now, one thing that I'm going to draw some harmonic parallels. I think that one reason why In Dreams has this kind of, how can I put it, sort of, maybe conjures up, not exactly ye olde England, but like, you know, times gone past, you know, something very nostalgic of ye olde times somewhere. So this is in B minor, and then the chord before that is like, now most classical music, and by classical I mean all of it, I mean Baroque, classical, romantic, all of it, you tend not to have the flat 7 going to the 1 minor, and it's normally a dominant based on the flat 7 going to the 1. Now don't worry if this goes over your head, if you're not good at understanding harmony. I recommend that you get a teacher to help you with understanding harmony, or go learn about harmony. Don't worry, just kind of, you know, take this in, let it go over you, and then, you know, just wait for the next bit of the tutorial. Don't worry too much, you know, maybe this is just sort of whetting your appetite. But so, you know, for example, let's find an easier key. Let's say that we're in A minor. We've just got a piece that's in A minor. Think of Fur Elise. Now, classical music just wouldn't use the dominant based on G, which is the flat 7. So normally what you'd have is in something that's in A minor, you'd have the E dominant 7th, which uses a G sharp. That G sharp then goes to the A. What you don't get is this. You don't get. So it's like what I'm playing is an E minor going to A minor, which instantly actually does sort of conjure up ye olde England, and because it's modal. But I'm not going to go into that too much. So basically, instead of going, and I haven't planned this in advance, let's just see what happens. So we've got tonic, we've got dominant, which is E dominant 7, with a G sharp. Now, basically what both these pieces do a lot, In Dreams and There Was a Most Beautiful Lady, is instead of like having the 1, A minor, which I'm just using here just because it's an easy key to work with, no sharps or flats, and then using E major, which is the dominant. It would be like we're going to use G major, going to A minor. So does this work with the melody? It does, it really does. Which is almost like Greensleeves. It does have a ye olde sort of modal feel to it. It's just not very classical. So we've got the 1, we've got the flat 7, which is G major, and the 1 minor, the flat 7 major, and yeah, it's not sort of harmony that classical music has had for the last 300-400 years or so. So in Dreams, here's the flat 6, the flat 7 going to the 1, and that's sort of what gives this piece a lot of its flavour. And let's come back to There Was a Most Beautiful Lady. Even if we just look at the very last bar, the penultimate chord, the chord second from last, is an A major, which then resolves up a tone to F sharp major. And I'm going to talk a bit more about this in a minute, but if we think of the piece ending on F sharp major, the chord before is exactly the same kind of function chord that I was talking about before, which is like the flat 7, which is a tone below, which gives it this very modal, very Greensleevesy, ye olde kind of flavour to it. And then where does that ending come from? Because at no point did we kind of realise that we were going to go to F sharp major. So I'm just going to talk about the harmony of the first few bars. Again, don't worry if this goes completely over your head. But when I sat down and started looking at this, I was like, it's beautiful, but what the heck is going on with these harmonies? I was like, what is going on? It seemed like chaotic and just going all over the place. And it was important to me to sort of figure out what's going on here, because when I have some kind of logical understanding of it, then I can feel much more, this is what's going on. So generally, with almost all tonal music and almost all classical music, and here by classical I mean like, you know, everything, including like in Dreams, really the ear straight away wants to know, where is home? Where is the home key? And when we start, this is like, what is that? What is this harmony? I'm going to come to that in a minute. But it's like, where are we? And it builds this really strong sense of suspense and tension, because this just can't be home. And one way to sort of know, to get this feeling of where is home, if I just played this, the end, is that satisfying? Do you feel satisfied? It's like, no, that is not satisfying, because we don't know where home is. It hasn't resolved. It's unresolved. Is that the end? Absolutely not. Now it's even more unresolved. And by the way, while it's on my mind, do not do the pedal markings as they are. And again, I'm going to talk about this. I think this is going to have to be a longer video. There's so much to talk about in this video. But basically, especially if you play this on a big grand piano, it's going to sound absolutely awful if you have that pedal the whole way through the first bar, because it doesn't sound so bad on this digital piano, but on a big grand piano with very reverberant acoustics, the D sharp and the C sharp in the right hand will massively clash with the D natural in the left hand. It's just going to sound absolutely horrible. So, you know, use your ear, use your good taste, and do not just do the pedal markings as they are. Anyway, coming back. Not resolved. Not resolved. We have no idea what key we're in. Now, is this resolved? No, it's absolutely still not resolved, but we feel like we're almost going to resolve soon. Now, it's a super interesting chord. It's really like a jazz chord. It's like a G dominant 7 sharp 11 is what a jazz person would call it, but don't worry about that. But basically, it's a G dominant 7th chord. So we've got G dominant 7th, and then we've got an A major 7. We still don't really know where home is. We think maybe it could be here, but this major 7 is like really weird. It gives it a very unsettled quality. Kind of, and then and now we know this is home. This is absolutely home. This is absolutely home. So by the middle of bar 4, we're like, we're in A major. So remember that G dominant 7th, which takes us to A major. That's exactly what we were looking at before. That's like A minor. This is the dominant bass, the tone below that. Well, this is the same thing here. We've got, and then we've got the dominant 7th built on G, which then resolves up to A major. And then we go to the subdominant. Then we go to D major, which then goes to a sus chord based on the dominant, going to the tonic. But don't worry about all of that. The important thing is we've got subdominant. Subdominant is like the 4th degree of the scale. We've got D major, the 4th degree of the scale, which then goes to the 1. And then we go back to the subdominant, D. Then we go to the relative minor, F sharp minor. And then we come here to, this is basically, it's basically the dominant as a sus chord. Don't worry about that too much. We've got the 2 minor. Here it is, it's the G. This is the dominant based on the flat 7, and so on and so on. Now, so basically you're using these chords over and over again. You're using the dominant based on the flat 7, you're using the subdominant a lot, and sometimes the dominant, but it's sort of, the dominant is never that strong. The dominant would normally just be like just an E7, but here, it's, you don't have the 3rd, you've got the 2nd and the 4th, which makes it a lot softer. Again, do not worry if a lot of this is going over your head. If I was doing this with a student, I'd be going a lot more slowly and sort of, looking at this in a way that was a lot more gentle. But I do think this is really useful. Now, before I show where all these things come from, I'm going to just come back to In Dreams. The flat 7 dominant going to the 1 minor. Flat 7 going to the 1. Now here, this is the 1, or is it, hang on. Yeah, so the 1 is D major. So D major, and then here we have a subdominant. The subdominant is G, tonic. So if you're doing practical exams, it's a plagal cadence. And plagal cadences are much more gentle than your perfect cadences. So plagal cadence, it's subdominant, tonic. And the whole way through this piece, through In Dreams, there's a massive emphasis on the dominant on the flat 7, the subdominant, because the subdominant is so gentle. It's such a gentle sort of, not too much tension. Dominant. A subdominant plagal cadence, and it's so similar. So basically what I'm trying to point out is that this ludicrously simple, cheesy, very unsophisticated In Dreams has so much in common with There Was a Most Beautiful Lady. And when you recognize that underneath all this very exotic sounding chords and weird stuff all over the place, it's basically just an emphasis on the dominant on the flat 7, the subdominant and the dominant. So we've got, don't worry about this one too much. The dominant on the flat 7, and then going to the 1. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And then the subdominant. And we almost have a plagal cadence. Almost. It's almost that. With this just very subtle, almost dominant in the middle. Almost a plagal cadence. And that's what gives this very gentle, sort of ye olde, green sleevesy kind of vibe. Anyway, I need to just very briefly pause the video to make sure that I don't run out of space on the card, and then I'll continue. Okay, and so I'm back. So yes, where does, and it's interesting because this flat 7 on the dominant, it's used a lot in jazz, and it's called a backdoor progression. Don't worry about that. You don't need to know any jazz. But what's really interesting, like basically, if we go through it all, we do start with this sort of very ambiguous F-sharp chord, which maybe hints at the fact that we finish on an F-sharp major, but really there's very, very, very little in the entire piece to hint that we're going to have this, what's almost quite a shocking end on a completely different chord, which is this F-sharp major, because really the whole way through the piece we really think we're in A major. That maybe hints at it, but really, really subtle. Now we're in A major, subdominant, F-sharp minor, relative minor. We haven't left the key. Coming back to A major. By now we are so strongly in A major. Here's this G major all the way through. We still feel we're really strongly in A major. And now we start to leave a little bit. Whatever it is. But we come back to A major. So we had that digression, but it's like, no, this is still A major. So here, quite interesting. It's the dominant. Back there, and then we're in A minor briefly. And then here we've got a really big climax. Now, this is the point where we most leave the key. We really leave the key of A major here. What is it? We've really gone out of orbit here. This is just somewhere very different. So in tonal music, the further away we get from the tonic, the more tension there is. The more tension there is, the louder we get, and the more tension we want to feel. Which again, you know, like the person who plays this for ABRSM, they actually go down. They're so bad. They're so bad at playing this. It's just awful. I think the way they play it is like they play. They go very, very gentle. But no. There's so much harmonic tension in this moment. So we've got A minor. Tension, because it was A major. Bit too much there maybe. Real tension, and this is the dominant. We're feeling the tension of the dominant coming back to the tonic. So there is absolutely no doubt that the key is A major. So it's so weird that when we get to the end, we go, and then suddenly, it's like, where on earth did that suddenly come from? It's so unexpected. And I think it's sort of really something extra that's giving it this modal feeling that's sort of like almost pre-tonal, because classical music basically after the time of Henry VIII, after the time of Greensleeves and all this stuff, is basically you choose a key, that is your key, then you have dominant tonic, and that is your key. To finish in a completely different key is just completely shocking to anyone from Bach onwards, from Baroque onwards. But how does this work? How does this work? We've basically got a B minor 7, so in the key of A major, and we do still feel like we're in A major when we get to the end. So A major, and here we kind of feel that we're on the subdominant. So we still feel that we're going to finish there. So I mean, I could play from bar 39. I could play like this. And I'm basically going to finish it in A major. You know, yeah, it's not very satisfying, but that's kind of where we feel we're going, or like that kind of thing, or yeah, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, why does it work going from there to the dominant, and then why does it work suddenly going to F sharp major? Because it really does work. So we've got and it works. It really does work. It's not very classical, but it works because F sharp minor is the relative minor of A major. So we've got, and by the way, in jazz is all about 2-5-1 progressions. This is basically a 2-5-1 progression, but anyway, I'm not going to go into that. So we've got from the beginning of that line, from bar 40, I did already tell everyone to have the book open, didn't I? So you can see what I'm talking about. Bar 40, bar 41, kind of the subdominant. And then instead of going to the tonic, we can kind of go to the relative minor. So I'm just going to go to the relative minor. And that totally makes sense, because instead of that's the major, here's the relative minor, F sharp minor, but then he's taken that a step further and done what's called a tierce de Picardy, which is when you end something that was minor and suddenly unexpectedly make it major. So, and then instead of minor, we go and go, send it on the major. Now, so what we've got, we have, that's basically how we end up with this kind of first chord, I think, which is hinting at that. But then something else that you might notice is that when you have these three chords at the end, the second to last chord is like, it's basically a dominant 7. You don't have the 7, but it is a dominant 7. So we've got B, E dominant 7, which goes up a tone to F sharp minor or the F sharp major. That then is like the flat 7. So basically this is a very, very convoluted way of saying that the reason why backdoor progressions work in jazz, the reason why this chord of G, G dominant 7 takes us to A, the reason why in Fur release A minor, G, why the dominant can lead up a tone is because it's as if the dominant resolved down a fifth and then went to the relative minor. That's why it works. But anyway, I'm very sorry if I've gone way too quickly with all of this stuff. Let me know if you're interested in all of this, and I'll give it its own tutorial, this kind of thing. But I mean, I do think that even if you didn't understand a word of what I've been saying, I want to emphasize that in the long run, it's really useful and interesting to not just sit down and blindly play like the way the ABRSM person has done, just to go, which really does sound like the ABRSM version. And when I started playing this piece, I was like, what's going on? I felt like so the reason why this becomes useful, because I find bars 2 and 3 really difficult to interpret. This is ambiguous, but here, this is a cadence that takes us to the tonic, which is why there's a diminuendo. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, and I do need to make a dedicated video about this at some point, I talk a lot about musical tension and release. And when there is more musical tension, we get louder and we get slower. And when the tension is released, we speed up and we get quieter. And one of the most important things that creates musical tension is to leave the tonic and go to a dominant. So the dominant has tension, and when the dominant resolves to the tonic, that releases the tension, and then that is release. So it's not quite the dominant, but it is a dominant chord. It has a dominant function, this G7. It has a dominant function that resolves to the tonic. And it's this weird tonic because it's a tonic with the major 7th, and that major 7th is a bit spicy. But what you've got tension, a lot of tension, and then you've got a chord here with the dominant function which has tension, so you can lean on it, and that's why it's got a tenuto. The tenuto on that is lean into it because it has a dominant function, and then on the tonic release it. The tension has been released. So now, after all of that blah 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 about harmonies, you're going like, what? Hopefully, if you've stuck with me this long, you know, this far into the video, you're like, there's been a point to all of this. There's something actually very practical about knowing this, which is now I can feel dominant function, tonic function, release. So actually, I can speed up a little bit as well. I can go tension, tension, loads of tension, and then dominant tension, which is why it's written a tenuto, and then just quiet, let it go. Now a little bit of tension. It's not masses of tension because it's the subdominant. The subdominant doesn't have a lot of tension, but it has more tension than the tonic. So for example, you can't go and then go the end. That's clearly not the end. There is clearly expectation for something else, but it is a gentle expectation. So tension, and you feel the tension in the chest. It's not just intellectual. You look for the feeling. You feel that tension, and then feel it just release here. It's gone. And then tension, which is why it suddenly goes back up to mezzo forte. It's tension, and then tension, and then release. And this now floats. It's like we've had this tension. The tension releases, although I like to keep some of these notes in the pedal there, but we have resolved it. And at the point it resolves, the lark, the bird, the love in the heart, whatever it is, flies off. And then it just takes wing. And then it reaches this sad, tender moment in the relative minor. It stretches its wings, almost resolved, and you see here it gets louder because this is the dominant, and when you're on the dominant you have tension, and then it goes down because it releases. And how beautiful, it's just this beautiful release, and then it takes wing. So it's almost like that there's this tension which keeps it earthbound, it releases and goes, and then off you go, dove. It's gorgeous, isn't it? And then this new chord, and which pulls it back down. Now here it's sort of flying around. It's trying to fly away, but it's being pulled back. And another thing worth knowing here, which I really like in bar 15, and you know, I could analyse the whole piece like this, but hopefully I've whetted your appetite that this stuff, it's not just like intellectual, abstract theory. knowing and understanding harmonic theory immediately helps you to get to the real heart and juice of what this piece is about. Hopefully I'm demonstrating that. And hopefully you've stuck with me very patiently to get to, you know, the payoff for all of that. Here we're on the relative minor, and then here I feel like this is a D major. D major is implied in beat 2 of bar 15. Bar 15, D major implied, which is the subdominant, and you've got this C sharp appoggiatura note in the right hand, which you want to just lean on. So if I go from bar 14, now listen to me lean on the right hand in beat 2. So I'm going to do that now without talking. So listen out for the second beat of bar 15, me leaning on that appoggiatura C sharp, which clashes with the D in the left hand. And I lean on it not just with volume, but I linger on it just a little bit too long, like. And there I really milked it a bit more. So sometimes it's worth knowing, you know, what's going on. That here it's a D major, and this C sharp is kind of a bit of a dissonant note that's resolving to the B, and you can milk it, and so on and so on. So there's a lot more I could say about this, but I think that I'm more or less going to leave it like this, because I think what I intended to do was to show you my approach to this piece, rather than, you know, give up all of its secrets, as it were. And it's a little bit, you know, complicated, the harmonic language, but I really do think it helps. And, you know, at grade 6, you know, you've probably done your grade 5 theory, and then the grade 5 theory was probably really boring and really dry, and was like, why am I doing this? And then, you know, this piece, it's a great opportunity to actually take a lot of this theory and go, this is why we need it. This is why it's kind of really useful. It's not just dry and academic, but to figure out how to really pull emotions out of things. So, yeah, I don't think I've... I mean, really, you know, I could spend ages talking about how to do all of these rhythms, but the main thing is it's got to fly, it's got to be free, it's got to have push and pull, and not like the ABRSM recording. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I probably tested a lot of people's patience with it. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so that you can know about all the future videos coming up, and like and leave comments and all that kind of stuff. And see you at the next video. Take care. Bye.